Welcome to Live Free. I'm Angela K. Austin. Together, we'll discuss books, we'll explore the world, and we'll do it with some of my closest friends. And hopefully, we'll make new ones along the way.
Hey everybody, this is Angela K. Austin, and today I am here with Readers of Romance. Say hi to everybody, starting with Amanda.
Amanda. Hi.
Barbie.
My name is Barbie. Hi.
All right. Michelle.
Hello, it's Michelle.
And Denise.
Hi, I'm Denise.
All right. So when I go on the circuit from event to event, I'm always meeting people who are readers of romance. But even more so, I meet women who are interested in reading books that are not only written by people of color, but books that are about people of color. These four ladies agreed to join me today to discuss why they like books that are about women of color. So let's jump into this, right? My first question, and we're gonna do round robin. We're gonna start with Amanda. If you ladies can tell me one by one, why do you think it's important to have diverse voices in books? Why do you think it's important to see women on the pages who look like you?
I think it's important because we deserve a fantasy too. So many times you'll see, I grew up reading romance, all different kinds of books, mysteries or whatever. But for the majority of my growing up years, there were very few options for people of color, at least the ones that I was able to find. So I like the opportunity that is provided now, especially with all the indie writers, to be able to read books about people that look like me. And it's important for other people to see that we're not just one type. You know, there are all different types of people. We come in all different shades, all different sizes, multiple careers. Everyone isn't a maid. Everyone isn't, and there's nothing wrong with any of these careers, but everyone isn't a school teacher. You know, we have scientists, we have athletes, we have, you know, millionaires who are legitimate millionaires, because guess what? There are legitimate brown millionaires. And it's great to see that and know that, you know, life imitates art. So in some ways you see it and it can come to be. It's like Star Trek, Star Wars, all the little gadgets that they had in the 50s and 60s when these shows were on the air. Well, Star Trek was on the air in the 60s, but when these shows are on the air, now we have it. You know, they were with their tricorder walking around with just a tablet in their hand and doing things. And what are we walking around with? Tablets in our hands, and we're doing things because life imitated that art. And so that's what I love about it.
Yeah, and I think that you're absolutely right. You know, sticking to one specific genre or one specific type is, you know, just one more thing that kind of pigeonholes writing. And so having diversity across genres and across the characters in the genres is really important. Barbie, what about you? Why do you like diverse books?
I see my family and I see myself in it. I grew up reading romances, and basically from 14 to maybe I'm now 32, I've only seen one Hispanic Puerto Rican millionaire, and it wasn't even done in my way of thinking right. And now with indie publishing, like Amanda said, I have access to writers who are Puerto Rican, and they write the stories that they want to write around their family, about love, and I'm able to say, oh, that is exactly how I grew up.
Now that's really interesting. I'm going to tell you because I'm slightly older than 32. Maybe I'm like 33-ish. But But what I'm, when I first started writing, one of the reasons was because I picked up a book and it was just, this book didn't represent me in any way. So I come from a moderate family background, and it's just like I didn't see blue collar workers in the book. I didn't see whatever. Nothing felt like it connected with me. And I just started thinking more and more about being able to tell those stories, because those were the stories that I kind of felt like were missing. So I love that you said that. What about you, Michelle? Tell us why you like diverse books.
Well, I think I'm probably the oldest one on the call, so I'm representing the over 50 crew.
All
Woo-hoo.
right.
So it is true. When you grow up seeing dolls that don't look like you, TV shows with heroines that don't look like you, and then books. If you go by the books that used to go like the Harlequin romances and all that, love never happened for women of color. We were forgotten. So people developed this view of us that we don't love, we don't know how to love, or we are hookers, maids, that we don't have high profile careers, we don't make money, we don't have families, we don't get our kings, our princes, our billionaires. So when those books came out, you're reading them, you're like going, she looks like me. Because in all the books that I read, I see myself, but the way they were written before they were women of color, it's like, I would never do that. I would never say that. Because it's not how I talk, it's not how I grew up. I come from a military background. They never had books about women that were in the military, with successful military careers, or that survived the military environment. And they didn't look like me, they didn't sound like me, they didn't have my struggles. They didn't know when people was like, I'm worthy of love too. So when you start reading those books by women of color and indie publishing, you start realizing without the books being whitewashed, because the characters were too ethnic sounding, or the covers used to get me too, because they were never women that looked like every shade of black that there is. I mean, in my family, we go from the lightest to the darkest. And you look at those books, you would never think there are black people in the world. But there are black women, as you represented by this whole panel right here, and we come in all shades. Women of color, we come in every spectrum. We love, we lose, we have children, we bury loved ones, and we still survive it. But we're not these women that can never take adversity and bounce back. Because one thing we do is that no matter what life deals us, some of us handle it well, some of us don't handle it so well, and some of us don't even bounce back. But we keep pressing forward to be the amazing women of color that we are.
Okay, I love that you said we are worthy of love too. All right, I had to write that down, because that is something that I feel like I have said so many times whenever anybody has interviewed me, is that the books that I try to put out there, I want to show that, because so often you get the character of color in a lot of books that I read growing up were the sidekicks.
Mm-hmm.
They were like comic relief. They were like sassy friend. They were the strong whatever they were, right? But you just never saw somebody who was just getting their shot at kind of like the American dream, like love, two dogs and a kid, and that crazy old frackin' picket fence, right? It's like we all have our version of it that we want, you know what I mean? So it's like, why can't we, as women of color, why can't we kind of get that same thing where we have that hero who will go through heaven and hell to get to us? Why can't we get that too? And so I love that you said that, worthy of love too. Bam, get it, girl. All right. Hey, Denise, tell us, why do you like diverse books?
Kind of hard to follow up to everything everybody just said because it was spot on. I remember reading as a child and imagine that the white characters were black. And I got tired of imagining that's me in the book, but you don't reflect what I do as in life. You don't reflect my culture. And I think I got to the point where I wanted to read about me, about my culture. not wanting to be the friend, the sidekick, as you mentioned, it's like Michelle said, we deserve love and we're worthy of love. And to see a beautiful sister finding love, whether it be with a white man, Asian man, Hispanic, Black, it's just we are finding love among a university of men who find us attractive, where we're the bottom of everything in society. We have to be the stronghold where everybody's saying on the Black woman's back. But, you know, somewhere in the strength, we're soft, we're feminine, we're desirable, and we want love. And so I want to read about that.
You said being at the bottom. Oh, see, you guys gonna get me on my soapbox. I'm like, why do we have to be at the bottom of everything? Okay, I mean, like honestly, I come from a corporate America structure, and so writing for me has been like a passion for so many years. And as I jump deeper and deeper into the world of indie publishing, it's just one of those things, because I know you guys have heard me say this before, but when you go to the national book events, it's like if you go to a major event that's for writing or books, romance is going to be at the bottom. If you go to a romance event, that's a national or major event, then indie publishing will be on the bottom. And then indie publishing for people of color will be on the bottom of the bottom of the bottom. And so it's just one of those things that, creating, I think, enough knowledge or understanding to mainstream publishers that women of color will no longer be on the bottom. We want to be seen and we want to be heard, and we want them to know that, we want these things. And if they give them to us, we will purchase them, we will support them, we will keep coming back again and again.
What I was thinking is there's something that they also forget, is that we don't want just one type of woman of color to be seen. Because on this interview, we've got 5 different shades of women of color. So we run the gamut, and there's still shades that aren't even represented right now. I don't want to see the light-skinned, straight-haired, thin sister who looks like she could be a white woman. I like to see my dark-skinned sisters too, with, that don't have long hair. They may have the rocking the short furrows of the natural do. But I also don't want to see books where the light-skinned women are portrayed as not knowing who they are or not Black enough. Mm-hmm. So even within the genre of IR romances, you have some where they like the urban romances. Those bother me because it almost plays to a stereotype, and I don't like stereotypes. Some of them are so well written, it's like going, wow, okay, I can go with that. Well, you can see where she has her corporate side, she has her urban side, she has her little girl side, and then she's got that total badass woman that's not going to take it from anybody. But we all have those different facets. And so in traditional romance environments, most of the time they want to portray the Black woman as a sidekick, but she's got a bad attitude, she's got the neck rolling, teeth sucking, undereducated, unwed mother, hooked up with the bad boy from the neighborhood, didn't get past high school. That's the persona they present. But I know women that have PhDs. I know women that are single and with no children by choice. Not because somebody didn't choose them, that's not the role that they saw for themselves. I know women that are married with no kids because they don't want kids. So we run the whole gamut.
Yeah, and a lot of people, are in that situation. It's just being able to see the diversity across the background of the characters in the story. That, quite frankly, to me, is what makes each story richer and unique. And you're going to get different stories from different authors, because different authors, as they write in different genres, they're going to write those stories that they feel like are missing. And we're going to go back a little bit, because there's a few things that, you and Denise mentioned, from genres to cover art, a whole lot of things there that I want to unpack.
I kind of want to piggyback to what Michelle said.
Okay.
because as a Latina, I grew up in the United States, but I did go to Puerto Rico some summers. When I do get the chance to read about other Latin cultures, it's hard to find number one, it's hard to find a Latin author who writes great Hispanics on page. Slowly they're coming out, thank God. But it's like Michelle said, we come in different shades. My cousin, if you look at her, you would not think she's my cousin because she is probably Amanda's shade of brown, but she's my cousin. And I have other relatives that are a little bit lighter. So also Latinas get placed in that sidekick role. We're not all sassy. We're not all maids.
Mm-hmm.
We're not all caregivers.
Ooh, we forgot about the caregiver, didn't we? Yeah. We did forget about that role. But but that is the thing, because like one of the things that I always say to people is that having diverse voices at all seats of the table, all sides. Like one of the people that I interviewed recently for the channel was a Latina literary agent. And so and one of the things that she and I talked about is just, it's not only just having people who are writers who are writing these characters, but having people at different sides of the table all the way up and down, because then you have people who are actively seeking out, searching for, looking for these diverse voices. Now, a couple of you guys, like I said, we have met, or I've met you guys because basically of the indie publishing circuit, and more specifically even for IRAE. We're going to shout out to Kasana. Hey, guys. We always shout out Kasana. And so, Denise, you're going to get on the hot seat for this one, right? So, so Kasana was one of the first people who agreed to do an interview for me. When I was like, Kasana, I'm going to do this podcast. She was like, bet, girl, I'm there. She was like literally, I think, the first person that I interviewed. So, but this is like, when you talk about indie publishing and you talk about finding these events, Denise, I want to start with you since, you are Kasana's ace. We all know that Denise is Kasana's ace. So tell us a little bit about, when you guys were planning these events, why you thought they were important. And then, guys, I want to talk to each of you about, like, how do you find indie books to read? Before you ever attended an IRAE event, how did you find books by women of color that were about women of color? So before we go to that question, Denise, let's jump over to you. Tell us all the details.
Details or the arguing? Kasana had her first event in Orlando, and it was discovered by accident. I was talking to another reader in a Facebook group, and she was mentioning she was going to Orlando to Kasana's event. And I was like, oh, I know Kasana. She have an event. I'm there. So I went and we got to talking, and I was like, you know what? You need an assistant. I'm dedicating myself to be your assistant. Did not know what I signed up for. I thought I was just going to pop in, talk a little bit. But when we got to planning and I saw everything behind the scene, I was like, oh, how do we get people to know about this? How do we get out into the many groups? And so we started posting about the events, and we started out where, okay, if we get 40 people, we're great. And then, next year we get 50, we're great. Where, due to COVID this year, we would have had pretty close to 175 people. So we went from 40, hopefully, to where we had an event with 175 people. And, people always say you should advertise outside Facebook. You know, there are people who are not on Facebook, but we wanted to keep RAE intimate. We wanted readers to be able to have that one-on-one or two-on-one with the authors, and not be, well, I came to this event and I couldn't spend any time with the authors and get to know my authors. So we kept it among Facebook groups, to those readers who are there with us, those who buy a book, well, I can't say our books, but buy the author's books and are there chatting with them every day and throughout the entire process. So for me, when I look for a group, I look for an interactive group where I'm going to be able to be there to support the author, and also be able to say, hey, you know, you're a great person. Why not try to come to our event? And you'll be amazed at, you know, the friendship, the family, because we all are family. Once you come to an event, you're family.
The first event I went to was Yvette Hines' event.
Oh, okay.
You remember that, Denise? It was the weekend with Yvette Hines. So I went to that. Was my first in-person book event. And all these lovely ladies I had been chatting with in Facebook, I got to meet in person. The first person I met in person was Charisse.
Yes.
And we sat in the lobby and chit-chatted and talked for a while, and then everything started happening. And then I got to meet Anseli. And that was, it was very emotional meeting her, two of us talking, because she's, you know, had a military background. And we sat in the lobby and we talked for, I don't know how many hours. And we were talking about the effects of being in the military once you leave. And for some of us, you know, we carry badges, I'll call them, for the rest of our lives from our service. And we talked about my struggle with PTSD. And we sat there and we talked and we talked. And then later on, she wrote a book where the character, she did an amazing treatment of someone battling with PTSD and not getting treatment. And then someone loving him enough to say, shouldn't you talk to somebody? And she described a scene that I had told her that I had issues with some of my triggers. But that's when you begin to connect to your authors, as not just your authors, they become your friends, your family. Like Denise said, when IRAE, that's a family reunion. Every time we get together, you hear us squealing through the halls, in the lounges, you know, taking over the fire pits at night, the bars, the karaoke.
Actually brave enough to try karaoke when I'm hanging out with you guys, because otherwise I'm gonna need like a whole shot of something. But just because everybody, we're all familiar with Charisse and RAE and Sally, but you know, there are some people watching this or listening who may not know. Tell them what IRAE stands for, you know, and we'll get into more detail later so they can go and look that up. Last names, Charisse, Yvette, who are these people?
Oh, Yvette Hines, she's an IR author as well. Mm-hmm. She writes, and she's like the people that wear human skin, but they're beasts underneath. And you know, it's kind of ironic when you talk about a shifter, because all have an inner beast that comes out for various reasons, be it because someone has angered us, we're protecting somebody, but we all have a beast that lives inside. So, you know, and I heard someone once say, well, I couldn't read a book about a person from the animal because I couldn't get with an animal. No one is saying you're humping them while they're an animal.
And who was Charisse? Which Charisse?
Charisse Williams.
Okay. And Denise, tell us, what does IRAE stand for?
Interracial Romance Authors Expo, and it's held every April in the state of Florida, and we try to hit different beaches each year. But the hotel in Daytona Beach has been holding us hostage for a few years now. They keep wanting us to come back. Daytona Beach, Clearwater,
Tampa,
Orlando. We just try to hit all the beaches in Florida to just give people a vacation away from everybody. people who understand me, who don't see me as someone who has their face stuck in the phone all day reading. Someone who understands me.
Or who gets when you start talking about that character like they're real people. You're like, girl, I cannot believe that, Jasmine did blah blah. And they like, I know. Remember when so and so? I did that one day at work, and I said, I'm so mad with him right now. She said, who? I was like, Diego. I just don't understand. She's like, well, where'd you meet him at? I said, it's in my book. And they're like, oh.
But that is literally one of the best compliments I think that anybody can give anybody who's ever written a book, is the fact that if the characters feel real to you, if you feel like you know them, you can be like, oh yeah, that person's just like my cousin, my aunt, my whatever. But you guys made me think of a couple of things: cover art and genres. Now, before we get to genres, because I think that's going to be really, really interesting to talk about, let's talk a little bit about cover art, because it comes a little bit off of what we were saying about the diversity of people of color, right? So we have all heard this before. It has been, I swear, like every year there's a huge blow up, right? Where somebody is saying that there's a publisher who doesn't want to put books out there that have people of color on the cover because it won't sell, right? Mm-hmm. And I'll even admit to this myself, as a person who has a master's in marketing, I can tell you my books that have women of color and my books that don't have women of color. I can tell you that the ones that don't have a little bit better sales. But now I say that because I think it has a broader sales for somebody who is an independently published author, right? So because of me not having a powerhouse behind me, a major brand, I'm somebody who is handling all of her own marketing, all of her own placement. And so if I put a cover out there that is representative of the context of the story and doesn't have a person on it, then anybody who sees it is like, oh, who is this? They're gonna like whatever. But when I was so shocked when I put out Before I Leave You, which was because of IRAE, I put out Before I Leave You, and I literally had to like take a moment, because probably my best-selling book is Beale Street Blues. And when I put, well, no, maybe Rumor, but and Rumor has a Black woman on the cover, but that was done by a publisher. But as an independently published author, if I put up Beale Street Blues and Before I Leave You, if I look at the initial sales, I actually had to take a step back. And I'm like, I'm putting Black women on the covers of all my books moving forward, because it absolutely beat my sales for Beale Street Blues. Up until that moment, Beale Street Blues, which has no person, no art, no one, it doesn't have a man or a woman on the cover, was my best-selling book. So I have to ask you, ladies, when you go to buy a book, not saying an author that you already know and love, not your one-click authors, but if you have a book pop up in your queue, on your Kindle, or if you're in a bookstore, or if you're on, whatever medium, what makes you click on the book? If it's an author that you've never read before, an author whom you've never read, is there anything that would make you click on it and be like, one click, I'm gonna try this book
out? So most of the time, if it's an author I don't know, I'm probably going to read the blurb anyway. But if I'm looking at the cover and the cover strikes me, I love to see women of color on the cover. I like to know, I mean, they're not always going to look like the person that's described in the book, but I like to know. And just because I spent a large portion of my reading life growing up reading books about people that didn't look like me. So it gives me a sense of, I'm not sure how to say that. It gives me a camaraderie, or being able to relate, to be able to say, oh, okay, so let me see. Oh, and especially if I see a woman of color on the cover, I'm like, oh, I don't know her. What kind of books does she write? This may be a new author for me. Let me read this blurb and see what's going on. And I may not automatically one click. I might get the sample just to see if this is someone new that I may want to read in the future. So I like seeing a woman of color on the cover. And it's like Michelle was saying, we're worthy of love. Why can't we be on the cover?
Yes. And you were right. And I admit that I was wrong. And so now I will be changing my ways. But, it's to the point of, like you just hinted to. So often when you're looking so for me, a lot of the women that I write, they may have natural hair or they may be certain complexions and whatnot. And so when you're looking for cover art, you can't find one that represents your character. And so you either have to settle for what's available or you have to doctor it. And by the time you finish CGI in that sucker, it looks awful and nothing like the woman that you want to represent. And so for me, I opted to go in a different direction and then try to use imagery that represented my story in some way. But after releasing that book, I sat back and I was like, well, all right, man. Angela will be putting characters on her books moving forward because this is crazy. But it just it really made me take a step back because as recently as just a few years ago, I've had conversations with friends who had the same conversations with their publishers where they were like, if we do this, your book won't sell. And so now I have proof for myself that is, I would say no longer necessarily the case if I think, especially if you have all the other pieces in place and everything is syncing together. Like you said, you read the blurb, the cover art, there's automatically a connection or camaraderie between you and the book, especially if you don't know the author. So now I'm changing my way of thinking because quite frankly, readers have shown me that I was thinking wrong. And so now I need to correct what I'm doing. And I'm hoping that others who are watching this or listening to this, if they're listening to the podcast, I'm hoping that they can get into that same space because now I will change what I'm doing because I think that is no longer the case. What about the rest of you guys?
I'm on social media a lot, so I follow a lot of authors. So when they post a cover, I look at it for like 5 minutes. Then I start reading the blurb. And then let's say if they have those ARC readers and they're already placing it on Goodreads, then I'm reading those remarks on Goodreads. But also like my friends are talking about it. I think I posted one like a couple months ago of Nina Crespo's Harlequin Presents. And I just loved the cover because it was just so realistic and it looked so great. And I'm like, I love this cover on my social media. And like everybody started liking it. And I'm like, I got to go back to the first book because the first book also has a great cover. But I've been like, kind of like, oh, I don't know if I want to read it because it's not really in my genre. But I also love that cover. It's amazing.
Yeah. And so what would make you hit that button and purchase? What would make you go ahead and do it?
I was reading Haiti Redeems, the one about the cowboy, Amanda. I read the excerpt on Kindle and it just stayed with me. And I'm like, with that excerpt of what I read, that it was like maybe 15 minutes and it just stayed with me. And I'm like, shit, I gotta go click that book because it's amazing. Like I just want to know, how does it end? What is the story behind that?
Well, Hadley Ray Dean was my very first editor. So, hey, I will keep working with Hadley. Thank you very much. What about you guys, Denise, Amanda? What's making you guys one click?
Well, for me, I the cover has to pull me in. I'll read the blurb. Now, there are some authors, I won't even notice the cover. I won't even notice the blurb. I'll just know, oh, Sierra London wrote this. Oh, Olivia Gaines wrote this. And it's just one click. So I know what their product brings. But if it's a new author, the cover has to pull me in, the blurb. I find that I don't read reviews. And I know a lot of authors want you to review and, you know, give them great reviews. But for me, I tend to find that reviews can be biased sometimes, and I like to make my own judgment. And if I go in and I see that this book is great, I will go in 50 groups and say, look, y'all read this book, read this book. And that's, to me, is way more valuable than a review, because now I have given you exposure in 50 groups. Someone I value on Facebook see it and they read it, then they're going to recommend it.
If the cover doesn't, you know, because I like to read so much, I like the cover sometimes gets me. Other times, even if there's not a woman on the cover, if it's a striking cover, I'll stop to gaze. And then I think on almost all books, I read the blurb to see if it's something that will draw me. Because there was one book, I think, that I completely loved, and the cover was not a woman. There was a woman on the cover, and it was the side profile of a man in a suit. And I was like, okay, it's a little different. I got a good-looking man in a suit. So I read the blurb. I said, this sounds pretty good. So thank God for Kindle Unlimited, because I'll do Kindle Unlimited if the book is available on Kindle Unlimited rather than buy it, hate it when it's in the back. But sometimes I've been disappointed because the cover's been like incredible. Then I read the blurb and I'm like, whose 3-year-old wrote this? There are some books where the stories are awesome, the cover's awesome, but the typos pull you out the story so much so that I get angry with the book and I'll stop reading. I rarely have returned books. And at times I've actually reached out to authors and said, are you aware of X, Y, and Z? I read one book where it was a military book. I think Denise has heard this story 50 times. And they were, first the person was in the Army. Great, wonderful. I'm an Army veteran. As I read the story, we started throwing in naval terms. And then we threw in Air Force terms. And I'm sitting there going, those branches are not interchangeable. Army does not have some submarines. You know, Marines don't wear, you know, they don't live in, you know, on this installation. That's an Army base. That's a Marine base. You know, you're going, if you're gonna write a military story, for the love of God, do your research. Find a veteran. Go on the web and find some military terms. You can Google military jargon and figure some of that stuff out.
But you know, but this is really interesting because, you know, one of the things that we as independently, you know, self-published authors, one of the things that we all talk about is a couple of different things that you and Denise mentioned. One, we all talk about editing and we all talk about reviews. So when you were talking about being thrown out of a book because of editing, that's a pro tip to all my people out there. I know editing can be expensive. I'm surprised to hear you say that you don't pay so much attention to reviews, Denise, and I would really love to know, Amanda and Barbie, what you guys think. But Barbie, did you have a question?
More of a comment. Get a beta reader.
Yes.
Yes.
Lord Jesus. I was beta reading a couple weeks ago. I'm like, this is an error. That's an error. This is an error. It's not hard to ask somebody or a fan that you know very well, because, you know, relationship marketing. hey, I have this book I want you to read, to go over. Here's a list of questions, and whatever you find wrong, highlight it, mark it in the document, because once you put it on Amazon, I
Just
think Angela knows, it's hard to pull that down, right?
You know, it's like once you put it on, it depends. You know, if it's an audiobook, you can't take down. That's just going to be hard for you to re-record and get out there. But when you're talking about ebooks and print books, I've snatched down some ebooks. I've snatched them suckers down hard. We're like, oh, who did that? Yeah, and just snatch the whole thing back and reload it. Like, nope, nothing happened, nothing to see here. But but the thing is that depending on how major of a change you make, and depending on who your distributor is, like if you use one distributor and you, no matter how minor, if you use a certain distributor that I use, which is Ingram Spark, you can reload and it'll push it out back across everything. But if you use like an Amazon, for instance, if the change that you make is not a major change, that book won't be updated. So if that error is something that you really don't like and you don't want it there, if it's not major, you won't, like you guys, if you all are using your e-readers, it won't say to you that this book is being updated because it's not a major percentage change. So it does depend on which distributor you're using and how big of a change you're making and just kind of all other things. But so it can be hard. It's easy to change some cover art, but it can be hard to change your interior depending upon how you distribute it. But I agree. Beta readers, proofreaders, line editors, content editors. If you can't afford all of them, as an indie author, if you love your work and you really want to put something out there that doesn't distract the reader, you know, just piggybacking on what Michelle said, if you want to have something as clean as you can make it, just make it as clean as you can, you know, because there are so many groups of people who are willing to read, you know, read for you, and you can join a group and find somebody who's willing to read that. But I just want to jump back to reviews for one quick second, because I myself avoid reviews. Why do I avoid reviews? Because I write women's fiction, but a lot of people, because it has romance threads, I have to preface my stuff by saying it's not really romance, because people get mad at my character choices and they really don't like my endings. But I love my ending. We don't need bows on everything, do we, people? No. I know you guys love bows. I know it. I try to put bows on everything, but I can't. So this is my question. You know, so Denise, we know that you don't read reviews. You go more by recommendations. And I feel like you said that a little bit too, Michelle, that you go by recommendations. But what about you, Amanda?
One of the reasons I don't do reviews is because sometimes the review is not about the book. Well, actually, let me correct that. At least 70% of the time, the reviews are not about the book. They become personal attacks on authors. You get those that say, well, I remember this one. The woman, she didn't even finish the book. And she said, well, I didn't finish it because I don't like I don't like interracial romances. Why did you buy the book? It clearly says it was an interracial book. You had like, I think it was a black woman and a white man on the cover. So you knew it was going to be interracial. And then she said she was Latina, and so she couldn't connect with that. I'm like, huh? And then she proceeded to tear the book apart, and then she started attacking the author. And I remember this one. It was a review of Yvette Hahn's book, but she did the first 2 lines about the book, and the next thing you know, she plugged her own book in the review. I was like, what? And we're like, no. So in that kind of stuff, so I just had to stop reading reviews, because it's like, and then someone begged another author about typos, but reading their review, I had a hard time understanding the review because their review was full of typos. So I was like, I don't know what you were trying to say, so check that review. So I just stopped reading because they wound up making me angry.
I write reviews. I don't always read reviews, but I do write reviews because I was made aware of the way, especially because a lot of the indie authors that I read are on Amazon. and the way that they start doing some of their marketing with their algorithms and suggesting the book to different people is based on how many reviews the book already has. Not how many books have been sold, but how many people, you know, have said they liked it, didn't like it, or whatever, how many reviews it has. So I want my authors to be pumped up to get an opportunity to be seen by someone new. So I'll write the review and give an honest opinion of the book. Most of the time, if I can't write a good review, I don't like to give one, because in that case, because art is subjective. So someone else may really enjoy something that I really did not like. Didn't know I wasn't going to like it going in, but turns out I didn't really like it very much. So I'm not going to say, hey, I really didn't like this book. You don't want to get it, because they might love it. It might be right up their alley. So to a degree, I do read some, but most of the time it's someone I don't know. If it's an author I don't know and I'm really on the fence, I might go down. If they have some reviews, I might go down and scroll through the reviews. But if it's one of my one clicks, I probably won't read the review, because that's my one click. I'm going to get it anyway.
That's good to know, you know, because like I said, a lot of us, when I get together with friends and we're talking, it's like, I'm like, didn't I say this was women's romance? There's no bow. Leave me alone, you know, but it's just like, you know, and so we talk about that all the time. So that's just really good to know, that if it's your one click, you feel safe with not paying attention to reviews. But it's also interesting because you're looking at reviews for people that you may not have ever read before, because those are going to be important, you know, to people who are looking for new readers when it comes to their work. You guys are all women of color, different backgrounds, different levels, different careers. So when you look for genres, do you have a go-to?
I try to stick to contemporary romance. I love that genre a lot. It has, you know, cowboys, millionaires, blue collar people. I'm not so big on paranormal and urban fiction, but I slowly am like walking towards reading those genres as well. But I also read male romance. Like, if I would have to say, I like tropes more than I like genres. Like, for example, I like a second chance romance. I like a secret baby romance, but there has to be like some type of twist. Women's fiction, it's all about the journey.
Well, for all the authors out there, we love people like you. Read all the books, Barbie. Read all the books, okay? You know, just like a note from myself, I remember one of the first times I remember actually even having a conversation with Barbie was that, you know, literally Barbie walked up to me at probably IRAE and started talking about, it was either Rumor or Beale Street Blues. And I was like, oh my God, I don't even remember the book. She's read it. I need to act like I can remember all the details. It was just, you know, because it was just having this conversation with her. And I was like, oh yeah, that did happen.
No. I think it was a song for Nora.
Oh, Melody. Oh my God. And everybody knows when I wrote Melody, I didn't even read it after I wrote it. It was just like, I'm gonna put this book out there. And it was just so crazy because I was like, she knows all the details. It was such an honor. It was so great. But that's one of the things that makes so many of us feel good, is when we actually do meet people who have read our work and they know it the way that you knew that. So I can totally confirm that Barbie is a reader. What about you guys? Denise, Amanda, you know, Michelle, do you guys have genres? What do you like to read?
For me, I'm a true reader. I try to read everything. I will go from a J.R. Ward book to an Anseli book to a King Ellie book or to a Sonia B book. It's just, I like to read. So anything is fine with me to read.
Oh, you just everything. It doesn't matter. Wait, no. You don't like historical. I've tried to get a woman to read a historical book. not just because I've written them, I'm just saying, maybe because I've written them, but I've tried to get her to read historical for like 3 years. Come on.
I can't do historical. I would do almost anything except for a historical book. Um, I've I've read the classics, but I just can't do a historical love book. It just drains me. But for me, like Barbie said, I love to read because I work in the criminal justice system, and it's just an escape for me.
I I I will read historical, and actually, I believe my first IR book was The Color of Love by Sandra Kitt. And once I read that, I'm a library lurker. I would go to a library sometime and just walk around looking, seeing what I could find. And my library's African American section went from being like this to having row after row. And I'm like, oh my God. So I just basically went down the road checking out books and reading them and finding new authors. And once I read all of those and Amazon came to be, I started doing searches for books like the ones that I liked, the ones that I'd read and wanted. And that's how and Facebook introduced me to a lot of you guys, and I found IRAE and I was like, oh my God, my people. So I will read anything. And I loved Beverly Jenkins. Pretty much all of her historicals, I just went through those, just every single one of them. And loved every minute of it. And because I'm a history person. I like history. So I wanted to see that. I know that considering we didn't die out as a people, somewhere, someone found some love because we're here now. So I want to read about that, so I'll read anything. Mystery, sci-fi, whatever. If it's a good story, I'm in it.
That's actually one of the things that Beverly Jenkins and I discussed when I interviewed her, is that she calls her work edutainment. And, of course, she's somebody that I love, which is why I asked her to join me on this channel. But it was so interesting to me because, when you read one of her books, she does not dampen down the pain of the history at all. She throws you right into it, and then she pulls you, right on back, because like you said, there was love somewhere, and that's exactly what she said to me when I interviewed her, is that, there was love through all of that pain. And I just never forgot that. And I love that she throws that into her work. I mean, she has some beautiful work out there. And what about you, Madam Michelle? Tell us.
If it's got words on it, I'm subject to read it. No. Now, I started out reading historical romance, Barbara Cartland. So that was my first romances. So they don't really bother me too much. I've read them all. AA, AMBW, Asian, Black, White, Latino, Russian, you name it. If he loves a Black woman, I'm loving him too. And I think part of the things, going back a little bit, when you talk about, wow, they say that if you put a woman of color on the cover, it won't sell, because those publishers don't think that we love. And they don't realize that when women of color see themselves on covers, we buy those books. We buy them quickly because we're on them. It's the whole preconceived notion that society has that Black women don't love, or they don't want to love, or they're not worthy of love. And the books that talk about us, and they covers us from working in the corporate world, the legal world, the scientific world, the medical field. When you read about us, and even if we're not the doctor, we might be the nurse, or we might be the PA, you might be the paralegal like me. It's like, okay, you know what? We get love too.
When you're talking about self-publishing and you're talking about the indie world, the hardest thing ever, I mean, for a lot of people, it might be distribution and just like, how do they get their books out there, because they, are trying to figure out how to format and get their book circulated. But really that leads to what I think is really the hardest thing, which is to get your book into the hands of a reader, right? Getting readers enough consistency, enough product, enough whatever, to where they do become one clickers. Be like, I want that book. I want that book. So the question that I have for you guys, this is shout out time. So we're going round robin, right? So I've interviewed a lot of authors on this channel. But I want you guys to all think about one author that you think people don't know enough about. Somebody that you think might not be a one clicker, right? And we're going to start with Amanda, and we're going to round robin. Look at Amanda. She's like, me first again? But I want you guys to give me the name of one self-pub author that you have read, and tell us the book and tell us why you loved it.
She's a one click for me, and she's been doing this a long time, so she's not new to it, but I don't think as many people know about her as should know about her, and that's Shara Assad. And actually, after I read my first IR book and I started clicking around on Amazon, she was one of the first authors I landed on, and it was her Chevalier series. And I read it and I was like, oh yeah, I'm in. I stalked her. Like Michelle said, I pretty much tried to find everything. I was on Amazon and iBooks anytime anything hit. And I ended up finding her on Facebook and establishing a relationship. So now I have the inside track on when a book's coming out, and to try to find that out. But to me, she's someone people need to know about. They need to know more about, because she does really good work.
Okay. And I love Shara. I've been on the circuit with Shara for years. So kudos. All right, Barbie. And Barbie, for those of you who are not in the independently self-published world, Barbie might be a stranger to you, but she's a stranger to none of us. So this is going to be very hard for Barbie. You get to only choose one person, Barbie. Oh, and again, tell us the book. Tell us why you love it. We might need to go back to you, Amanda, to find out why you love that series. But Barbie, tell us why you love it.
Oh, I was like, oh my God, I have to get my Rolodex out. And then I have to figure out what book as well, because there's so many authors that I love who are independently published and they don't know about them. But I'm going to go with my class. Can I choose two? Can I do two? Come on, give me two. Two.
Nope, just one.
Okay,
one.
So I'm gonna stick with my first impulse then I'm gonna say Anna Selly, and I'm gonna say Love Through the Pain. And that's because I think that was the book she was promoting when I first met her, or I first learned of her. And she is the reason I went to IRAE.
Wow, well, let me tell you what. So, Ann Selly is totally a member of my tribe, and, we talk to each other at least like once a week. But Love Through Pain was probably when I first met Ann Selly. And when she gave me that book, I think, I can't remember, but I read that sucker on the plane, leaving IRAE, coming back home. I read that book in like 3 hours. I love that book. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. But why do you like that book, Barbie? And I want to go back to you, Amanda, before we go to the others. Why did you like that series that drew you to Shara? What drew you to that Ann Selly book?
Anna Selly is Puerto Rican. And I had to ask her on her takeover for building relationships around books. I'm like, so what part of Puerto Rico are you from? She's like, oh, I'm from this part. I'm like, okay, so what do you write? Oh, I write military romance. I also include my background in there. When I read Love Through the Pain, I think the book is like 50% in Puerto Rico, and then another 40 or 50 in the United States. Exactly how it would be in Puerto Rico at night. And all the characters she introduced in that Puerto Rico section, exactly the dynamics that I see when I go over there. And it's very beautiful as well. It's beautifully written, and if it wasn't for her going to IRAE, I honestly think I would have never become the person that I am right now.
Jump back over to Amanda, because I think she got away without telling me why she loves the series. Why do you love that Shara Azad series?
So I actually started with the last book because I didn't know any better. So I started with Forever Jade because I didn't know any better. And the book was really well written, but I am a sucker for a surly guy who is surly to everyone else, but loves his woman to death. And so she gave me my first book boyfriend, Rand Chevalier. I was like, oh yeah, I need to go find the rest of these men because this man is awesome. I need to find out about the rest of these people. It couldn't get better, but let's give it a shot. So that is why I love that book. Besides that, and I also like that, you know, even though Jade didn't quite see herself the way he saw her, he loved her, and you know, she wasn't the stick thin, you know, light skin, long hair that people want to say is the only acceptable way that a Black woman can be attractive. Despite all of the many ways that we are beautiful, they like this narrow way is the only way you can be attractive, and she was not that way. And I was like, yes, baby.
I love that. And we talk about book boyfriends all the time. I have an upcoming interview with Rihanna Mallory, and you know, and she and I talk about like one of her books that I love, which was done with Kasana and so many other people. But yeah, that one book that can draw you in and that can literally change and make you. I've got a couple of book boyfriends, and I can say another shout out to Rihanna. She had that Irish sugar. She had me. I was just like, you got to read all these books. You know, I swear, I don't think I've ever one clicked so hard in my life. Michelle, Denise, tell us, you get one. Barbie tried to cheat and have two, but you get one, Michelle and Denise. And I know this is going to be hard for both of you as well, but you get one. You tell us the independently published author, the book, and why it speaks to you.
I'm gonna go with Aaliyah Burke and her Megalodon Team series. All of them are my book boyfriends. Because it's a Navy SEALs book, series. Aaliyah is so quiet and loving and unassuming, and I think people tend to look over her because she's not out there like that. The book, the series, is because it's military background, but the women that these men fall in love with run the gamut in complexion. And, you know, you've got ones that just, you know, want to fade in the background, and then those that will fight every step of the way, and that will find that inner Amazon in them to help him when he's hurt and wounded, you know. So, and I always talk about the Megalodon Team series as like, okay, you know, is there another book coming? Is there another peek into their lives? And I think to kind of shut me up, she did one about like a Christmas get together with them to shut me up so I could stop annoying her about the Megalodon Team series. But yeah, I'll go with that one.
I love Aaliyah. Aaliyah and I have done an anthology together. She's an amazing, super sweet person. Mm-hmm. But, you know, a lot of people know about Aaliyah. I mean, she's like USA Today or New York Times. She's not so hidden away anymore. She's an awesome person. If you guys have not read her books, you know, you might be one of the only ones. So go check her out. And Denise, I'm going to say Kasana for you because I don't want you to get in trouble. So now you get to go pick somebody else, because we've already shouted out Kasana like 10 times. And that's Kasana DeWitt for people who may not know Kasana DeWitt. But so now, Denise, you get to pick somebody else, and you don't have to like worry about Kasana being like, you know, what about me? So tell us, who do you love and why do
That's a trick question. That's a trick question. I don't see how y'all answer this question. I cannot answer this question. I have been sitting here trying to think of one person, and I can't. Oh my God. Right off the top of my head, I'm gonna say, I don't know. Sonya B. her
Mm-hmm.
the lady's there's 4 books she just written about 3 brothers.
Salmon Brothers.
Yes, thank you, Michelle. Her books just drew me in. I've read other books by her, but this book was by far the series. She stepped outside of her normal box and she wanted to do something different. And she knocked it out of the ballpark, where she came into the industry as a paranormal writer and she was scared to go away from that and to say, I'm not going to make this series paranormal. I'm going to make it basically an alpha male series. But, you know, I think she did really well writing that series. And as I'm sitting here talking to her, I'm probably getting her books confused with somebody else. So I'm going to leave it at that because I don't know. It's like I said, it's a trick question.
That has to be one of the most fun things I've ever done in my life. I'm so sorry. Because I saw sweat on Denise and Barbie. They were both, I'm so sorry. I make myself laugh. You guys got to go with me. What did you have to say, Michelle?
Can I get a do-over since you said Leah's is more publicized?
Then I got to give Barbie a second one. You guys are killing me. Look at Barbie. Okay. If I give you a second one, then I got to give Barbie a second one. Okay. Do-over. Go ahead.
Toy Lawson Brown.
Okay.
And her series, The Men of the Cleveland Fire Department. That woman is amazing. And the series is, you know, it's a different guys in the fire department and different. The first one of the guys is you know, Latino. Then you've got, and he falls in with a black woman who's getting a divorce. And then it's just, the series is so well written that you get drawn in. And the first time I started reading, I think I was riding the metro to work. I bypassed my stop twice because I was so lost in the book. I got off the train, got on the went up direction. I passed it again, got off the train, go back, and I finally had to put the book away to get off the train to get to work.
All right, we're gonna give Barbie one more, but we could be doing this all night. So Barbie, you get one more, and then anybody else that you think people don't know enough about, you guys send me that information and I'll put links to their websites in the description for this episode. Because, you know, this channel is all about making sure that we elevate people who are self-published and who are trying to get their work out there and get it into the hands of people who don't or may not know they exist. You know, so Barbie, give us your next one. And then, you know, we'll tag all the rest. Because now I know that Denise is like, I got like 10 more people. And Amanda's like, oh, but what about this one and that one? Because, you know, I read 3 books every week. So Barbie, you get one more. And then we going to tag the rest.
You're so bad. I'm going to say Dyla Rose. I think you're on mute.
I was making fun of you. I'm like, everybody knows Dahlia. What?
Yeah, but I have I'm a military brat. I grew up with a military father, and when I read My Daddy is a Hero, loved it.
Dahlia is absolutely amazing. And for those of you who may not know her, she just signed with like a huge agency. I know, Denise, we helping. We're humoring Barbie at this point. You know, we're just humoring her. But for those of you who may not know Dahlia Rose, not only did I interview her for this channel, but, you know, she's got some huge things going on. So if you don't know her, check her out because she's got some great military books out there. And I think she's absolutely not only a phenomenal writer, but she's just an amazing human. With that being said, ladies, thank you. You know, thank you all for taking time to spend with me today to talk about independently published authors, women of color, men of color who are writing books about people of color. Because quite frankly, enough people are not hearing about them because they don't know how to find them.
Mhm.
You know, if you find one of my friends, you may find me, because Amazon would say customers also bought. But if you are somebody brand new, and if you don't have marketing dollars, or if you don't have editors, if you're not attending, you know, events like IRAE, people just may not know who they are. So thank you so much for telling us why you like books by people of color that are about people of color. And, you know, for the publishers who are watching this, I hope you listen, you know. And for the people who have been on this channel, for the people who will be on this channel, which are not only publishers and distributors, you know, but who are authors, I hope that you heard the voices of the women who shared, you know, this last hour or so with me, because they are looking for stories about women who are diverse. You know, they're looking for different genres. Put women of color on that and they will buy it. Listen to them, because these are the people who are magnified thousands of times over. There are so many people out there who are just like them, who want books about people of color that are written by people of color. So ladies, thank you all for joining me. I appreciate each and every one of you. And, you know, we'll probably have to do this all over again, because, you know, I know all of you guys got new authors you're looking for. We'll have to talk about them too. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh,
Love you, girls. Talk to you later.
Talk to you on
all of
Facebook.